Why is the U.S. military building up its presence in the Caribbean? It recently targeted a Venezuelan boat that it said was carrying drugs. President Nicolas Maduro says the mobilization is aimed at his government. So what should we expect from the new tensions in South America? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Cyril Venier. Tensions between the United States and Venezuela came to a head this week after Washington took the unprecedented decision of bombing a boat near the Venezuelan coast. The Trump administration said the vessel was loaded with drugs and gang members and posed a threat to the U.S. Venezuela's president denies those accusations and says his country is ready to defend itself. So what's behind this action by the U.S.? Is it about narcotics or politics? We'll get to our guests in a moment. First, though, this report from Imogen Kimber.
This is the moment a US missile hit a Venezuelan vessel in international waters. 11 people were killed. The US says the boat was carrying gang members and a lot of drugs.
There was massive amounts of drugs coming into our country to kill a lot of people. Obviously, they won't be doing it again, and I think a lot of other people won't be doing it again when they watch that tape.
Venezuela says it was an extrajudicial killing.
What the United States presented as a strike against drug traffickers was nothing more than an illegal massacre in international waters. They violated international law. They violated their own laws. And worst of all, they violated a basic human principle, the right to life.
The US Secretary of State defended the attack, calling it a legitimate strike.
If you're on a boat full of cocaine or fentanyl or whatever headed to the United States, you're an immediate threat to the United States. And the president, under his authority as commander-in-chief, has a right under exigent circumstances to eliminate imminent threats to the United States.
Leading up to the strike, the US had been increasing its military presence off the coast of Venezuela, with several warships, thousands of sailors, and a nuclear submarine. The Trump administration says they're on a counter-narcotics mission. Venezuela has responded by deploying troops on its border and coastline and encouraged people to enlist in civilian militias.
Because of this idea, I say to the imperialists of the North, we are prepared and we're going to fight. We're going to fight if you dare set foot in Venezuela.
If Venezuela were attacked, it would immediately enter a period of armed struggle. We would constitutionally declare the republic in arms.
Some fear the US is threatening President Nicolas Maduro's government. The US accuses Maduro of running a drugs ring. And in 2019, the US supported an attempted takeover by opposition leader Juan Guaido and applied heavy sanctions on Venezuela. The country suffered under economic pressure, but Maduro survived. President Maduro says Venezuela is now facing the greatest threat the continent has seen in 100 years and seems committed to fight on. Imogen Kimber, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests now. In Merida, Venezuela, Paul Dobson is with us, independent journalist and political analyst. In London, Javier Farge, a journalist and Latin American affairs analyst. And in Stillwater, Oklahoma, Martin Breenan, associate professor at Oklahoma State University. He is an expert on security, organized crime, and drug trafficking, who served as director of Latin American studies at the University of Miami. A warm welcome to all of you. And I want to bring you into the conversation. You are the expert on organized crime and drug trafficking. What did you think when you first saw the video that Trump released?
Well, he sent a naval detachment last month. They weren't going to just float around. They were going to be doing something. I looked at that and I thought, well, I mean, it's true. It's true that the majority of the drugs that come into the United States come via Central America, Mexico, and out of Colombia, which is the primary purveyor of cocaine to the United States. The problem that you would have is that Colombia is also a friend in a way that Venezuela is not. So I suppose the only place where you could do something like this would be with Venezuela, because you can blow up a Venezuelan ship. Venezuela is not an ally of ours, is not a friend of ours. The regime is illegitimate since last year's, clearly fraudulent elections. And you're looking at a state that's very hostile to the United States, that we don't see as legitimate. And so we can't. What you can't do is go float off the coast of Mexico and blow up ships there. You can't do it, but you can do it off the coast of Venezuela, right? And it's a twofer, because on the one hand, you're showing Venezuela that you can do. You can say that you're doing something about drugs being smuggled to the United States, and Venezuela is a source of drugs being smuggled into the United States, even if it's not a very big one. And at the same time, you're sending a message to a very hostile regime about your military presence and your willingness to actually use it.
Right. So it's two things that you're pointing out. It's drugs and a political message. We were asking at the top of the show as if this is about narcotics or politics, and you're saying it's both. Look,
it's both.
You also said there were naval detachments that were sent, and I'm quoting you, they weren't going to be doing nothing. Now, the U.S. sent 7 warships, more than 4,000 troops, and this, including 2,000 Marines. I mean, that's a lot of Marines, and that's a lot of firepower, and that's a lot of military capability. And their opening act is what we've just seen, right? Is to pulverize a speedboat. Now, as Javier said, they could have stopped the boat. That's what normally happens. They could have stopped the boat. Mm-hmm. They could have seized any drugs on board, arrested any gang members if there really were gang members on the boat. I say if, because we haven't seen evidence. But they didn't do that. They chose to kill the 11 people on board. And Trump clearly explains that in his view, this is deterrence. We heard the quote earlier. He says, I'm going to say it again, obviously they won't be doing it again. I think a lot of people won't be doing it again. When they watch that tape, they're going to say, let's not do this. What are your thoughts on this new military drug deterrence, Trump style?
I mean, they will do it again. There's an awful lot of money to be made. That's the reality. I mean, drugs will continue to flow into the United States as they have done for a very long time, and we've thrown a lot of force at it. Before this, in the 1990s and the very early 2000s, it was an air bridge denial, Operation Air Bridge Denial, to stop airplanes from crossing into Colombia. Now it's this. It's not going to stop it, but there's very clearly a signal being sent here. And yes, you're right. This is not usually what one would do. And part of the problem here is that when you blow up a boat like this, then you will never have evidence of what was on that boat, because it's gone. And which, there are all sorts of legal questions there that are quite complicated. But this is clearly about messaging, and I think primarily toward the Venezuelan regime.
Paul, on your end, you've told our team that there are elements of this attack that don't add up. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by this, Cyril, is essentially I'm struggling to understand what the U.S. administration gained from this attack. It's very clear what the Venezuelan administration gains from it. This is played right into the hands of Nicolas Maduro. Domestically, it's allowed him to intensify controls over a civil population. It's allowed him to persecute critics and push them either aside or into his camp, a tendency we've seen since the presidential elections last year, through which freedom of speech has been cracked down on, freedom of organization, freedom of protest, and a whole range of other attacks have been cracked down on.